Is that Michelangelo?
Yes.
Yes, so Michelangelo, and it's this idea of God and man. So, and we're going to be talking about this idea of what's called collaborative religious coping, working with God instead of it being all God or all man. And we're going to be looking at how spirituality can be the foundation for doing really, really well in life, but spirituality done the wrong way can send us down a dark path. So I'm going to give you a lot of the research of this. So, trauma. And would we agree? So trauma, it says the 3 E's. And it says there's usually some sort of event that's life-threatening, that is your traumatic event. And then with that, how you experience that event is based on your belief system, your personality, right? Your experiences in life is how you experience then the traumatic event. And then there's long-term effects, right? So, is the aging process traumatic?
Yeah.
And I would argue it's not just a one-time thing. It's like compounded complex trauma, isn't it? Because you might have multiple events, right, that are life-threatening, right? You break a hip, you have a heart attack, right? You lose your mobility, you have whatever issues you may have, and it's ongoing, right? And that's why it's compounded complex. So, particularly when we're talking about spirituality as we age, I think this is really key to understanding not just trauma, but this idea of post-traumatic growth, which is something that we don't talk enough about. So there are some forms of events, like I said, that are multiple throughout the aging process. Our experiences, and do you see how even this could change as we age and go through the process? That can we change our belief system? Can we get more honoring? Can we get more distrustful? Right? And then the effects are going to be good, bad, and ugly, right? We're going to have the good, the post-traumatic growth. We're going to have what's, I just use good, bad, and ugly because of the movie, but it's somewhat bad in the sense that resilience and just somewhat coming back to who you are leaves some residual effects, particularly in this idea of trusting others, right? And then there's the really ugly, which is your PTSD and beyond. So has anybody ever thought of how we deal with stuff as a bell curve?
What does the most mean?
Most people.
Oh,
Do you see that? So, in a typical bell curve, you got 16% down here, you got 16% over here, and you got 68%, 34 on each side of the median, right? That is your big bell, most people. And so what research is showing is that, and these are generally the numbers, right? About 16% have severe post-traumatic, and we can add the D, not just post-traumatic stress symptoms, but post-traumatic stress disorder. We can actually get to where, so bad to where we qualify for the disorder, and depression and anxiety and even suicidal thoughts. 16% on this end is post-traumatic growth, to the point where you just don't bounce back to who you were. You actually become better because of the trauma. Have you ever heard of this? Right? It doesn't our ancient literature, both religious and non-religious, teach us that there is such a thing, right? That somehow our heroes are people who take the worst things in life and struggle with it, particularly spiritually, right? And then become stronger and grow and have new possibilities. but they might lose some relationships along the way. And resilience is just trying to return to normal, whatever that is. But again, this idea that this isn't always like good. It doesn't always, can you return to normal?
No.
No. Right? You can never go back to who you were before traumatic events. Right? You can kind of get back to a baseline, a new normal coping, right? But you're changed. So a good example of this would be, I found a British study. And for those that have heard me, I try to quote some of these studies every now and then. But this British study was of an army battalion that was a sister battalion. And one of them went to Iraq and one did not. Right? And in 1 year's time, the one that did not go was overall physically healthier, had healthier relationships, and mentally healthier at 1 year's time. But by 4.8 years, almost 5 years later, the unit that had gone to Iraq was physically healthier, mentally healthier, and had better relationships at the time. The only bad thing, and that's what I'm saying here, the one thing that gets kind of broken forever is relationships. Not everybody can deal with going through this process, right? And it splits up relationships. But other than that, they were overall physically and mentally healthier. Totally better. So think about that. If you got a group of the whole 100% that went through something traumatic, this growth, and I would argue there's still growth here, right? And there's still some negative here. But the idea that all of this put together is better than the group that never went through anything. Does that make sense? Which shows you this is powerful stuff, right? And we're going to then look at the research that says why this happens. So why does this happen? So here, this slide has our 5 domains of post-traumatic growth. And I'm going to suggest that the one on the bottom is appropriately on the bottom because it's the foundation. As in, if you work on your spiritual development after really tough things, and when we say spiritual, I mean existential as well. What are your core beliefs? Right? So one of the things, what's the number one reason to move to an ACTS facility? Does anybody know? Can anybody guess? Jonathan?
Let me hear you speak.
Oh, I like that answer, but that's not the
Hear
answer.
him speak.
Oh, okay. What here became loving kindness.
And that's our motto, isn't it, Janice? Loving kindness. But the number one reason to move to a facility like this is safety and security. And what does trauma teach us? That the world is not safe. Does that make sense? And so how do we reconcile that the world is not safe, but God still is in control and God still loves us? Do those go together? Or is that a paradox? And is it one of many paradoxes? Right? Is part of accepting reality as it is accepting sort of multiple paradoxes. Right? Are there people in this world who love you and you love and you can trust? But are there also people in this world who you wouldn't trust for nothing? Right? Can both of those exist at the same time?
Yes, hopefully not in the same person.
Right. Well, and now we're going to get to that, Nina, in the same person. Right? Spiritual development. Who are we? Are we both a sinner and a saint at the same time?
Yes.
And is everybody else both a sinner and a saint at the same time. Do you see how that's a paradox? And that's hard to accept because we want to put people into, well, they're good folk, and they're not, right? So, your basic beliefs in the world, your basic spiritual, existential beliefs, is the world safe? Can I trust anybody? Right? Who is God? Can I trust God? Can I trust my neighbor? Right? Working through those belief system, right? And then getting to a place where you can say, I accept reality and paradoxes. Then gets you open to, well, then I can appreciate life more. I can build my relationships more. I can feel like I have some sense of control and personal strength. And then I can believe in new possibilities for my life, and that my life could actually be better after horrible things. Is this making sense? So this is the key component, because this is part of your coping style. So this research shows us you got to be optimistic, but you got to be brutally honest. Again, accepting reality. And that's part of these spiritual paradoxes. We are all sinners and saints at the same time. Perception of control. Again, this idea of, well, is it all God? And God's got control and I don't? Is it all me? And I have to do everything for myself? And there's no help from God or others? Right? Or do I have to do my part, but I also need and want support from God and from others? Do you see how that basic belief structure, basic perception of control leads to what we're talking about? And then that gives you a stronger sense of self, which correlates with this personal strength idea.
What does echo have to do with that slide?
I don't know. I pulled it from them, echotraining.org.
Well, echo is our.
Not the little
Not the
Echo.
same thing.
Not Alexa. Echo, no. Sorry. Echotraining.org. Obviously made a good slide though, because I pulled that from others and I'm like, oh, I like this one. Because I knew what I was looking for, right? Because I've been involved in the research for a long time. So, and this is a brand new book, just to give you one of the key researchers into, there's other guys from University of North Carolina, Greensboro, Tedeschi and Calhoun that were involved in post-traumatic growth research, but then taking it from that and really looking at the spiritual component, because we're going to get into this, that there's both a positive and a negative component to the spirituality piece. And this is Kenneth Pargament from Bowling Green, and this is his latest book, Working with Spiritual Struggles in Psychotherapy from Research to Practice. Just to give you an idea of where I get some of my ideas from. But I've been looking at the articles, and I'll also read you a quote later from a book. So this idea that it begins with compassionately accepting trauma-related feelings when they occur. Because sometimes do we try to push back our negative feelings? Right? Oh, I shouldn't be angry. Oh, I shouldn't feel helpless. Oh, I shouldn't feel these things. But if you can be compassionate to yourself, right? And say, oh, yeah, why are you feeling these things? Well, you're feeling them because you felt your life was threatened, right? You felt your end of your life is not going to be good because of mobility issues, right? Because you lose control, right? And isn't that a big thing for a lot of us, right? So can you be compassionate to yourself and accept your trauma-related feelings when they occur? Can you use your spiritual practices that foster self-compassion and, again, reality, make real God's compassion that establish a sense of safety, right? Trauma says the world's not safe. Then how do you get back some sense of safety, right? Well, you get that from seeking support from God and from others, right? And that helps you feel comforted and more safe in a world that's not safe, right? And that also not only gives you some sense of safety, but it enhances your self-agency, your perception of control. And it allows for, I love this is part of why I included this one, it allows for lament. It's okay to cry, isn't it? This is a messed up world, especially if you saw the news on the way in here. It's a messed up world, right? It is okay to lament and to mourn, right? The world's not safe. The world can be terrible at moments, can it? So then this leads to our values, and maybe even changing our values of spirituality. Interdependence, again, God and man, not either or. Shared responsibility, holistic health, and justice. And that leads us to our beliefs that arising out of lament and experiences of compassion, we can have hope, compassion, and justice that supersede fear and violence. And that new life may eventually come out of suffering. Post-traumatic growth. Do you see how it works? Okay. What are we bringing in? We're bringing in our personal factors, our gender, our age, our education, prior experience of trauma, physical health, psychological health. We're bringing in our environmental factors, our culture, our religion, our social relationships. And we're bringing in our unique personality, right? And this then factors into, is antecedent to the trauma. And do you see how, again, starts with a foundation of spiritual changes, right? And that allows us to have compassion to ourselves and to others, which eventually leads to appreciation of life. Then we can do what? Have personal strength. Make sense? Then we can have coping development to where we get good at handling tough stuff. Then we can actually, after having some psychological comfort, we can view new possibilities and dream again. Why? Because we know that we can handle tough stuff. Is this making a lot of sense? So just to give you an idea, the research on this, again, shows spirituality is not the only thing that, again, there's 5 domains to post-traumatic growth, but it is shown to be the foundation. That without it, you don't get to the others. Does that make sense? But with it, you get to the others, and then all of that together make us grow. But there is a negative side. Can religion be something that drags us down? It can it? Right? So, these researchers, this Pargament and others, tried to come up with coping subscale items, an instrument to do research with, to show what's the difference between positive religious coping and negative religious coping, and then begin to do research and show how that affects us through adverse events. And they're looking for stronger connection with God, sought God's love and care, sought help from God in letting go of my anger, right? Because you're always going to be angry after a traumatic event, particularly after something that's not right in the world. Does that make sense? The world's not right, you should be angry. Try to put my plans into action together with God. Again, that collaborative stuff. Try to see how God might be trying to strengthen me, right? And And that gives meaning and purpose to our trauma, right? Oh, God is working with me to make me better. Does that make sense? To toughen me up, to strengthen me. Then to ask for forgiveness. Not so sure about this one, but he has it in there. Focus on religion to stop worrying about my problems. But the idea of trying to make religion a problem solver instead of a drug to numb the problems. Do you know what I mean by that? So not just focusing on religion and let go and let God, because we hear that, right? Is that a good thing to say?
Sometimes.
Sometimes we need to hear that. You don't have to worry about it. It's out of your control. Let God deal with it. But there's this idea that the best thought is God doing his part, us doing our part, working together, right? And we're going to see with this letting it all go on God, not so good. More after this slide. But this slide begins to look at, wondered whether God had abandoned me. Can you see how people would say that in traumatic events? Felt punished by God for my lack of devotion, right? I went to Hurricane Katrina, right? Remember a lot of preachers were saying, New Orleans brought this on themselves because they're so into paganism and the dark arts. Oh, the earthquake in San Francisco was brought on by themselves. So we can feel punished, right? Punished by God for our lack of devotion. Wondered what I did for God to punish me. Questioned God's love for me. Wondered whether my church had abandoned me, because church is really hard after negative things, aren't they? Right? So you lose a loved one, you lose somebody, everybody's going to come up to you and go, oh, how are you doing? Right? Anybody heard that before? Oh, how are you doing? And you just get so sick of it, you don't want to go to church anymore. And then you might get into this too. You might decide that the devil made it happen. Right? And question the power of God. Right? The church lady from SNL. Who made you do it? Satan? Everybody heard that before?
Tammy Faye Baker said Satan got into the computer.
I know. She did.
She did.
So here's just putting it into some different words. The idea of what is positive coping. It's seeking spiritual support from God and others. It's actually practicing forgiveness to yourself and others. It's this idea of collaborative religious coping. God and man. Not all God, not all man. Seeking spiritual connection. Sometimes doing some sort of purification. Right? Benevolent religious appraisal means that God, you're appraising that God still loves you, as opposed to punishing God reappraisals, which is you're appraising that God is punishing you. Right? Spiritual discontent with both God and church and other people. Right? Interpersonal religious discontent, so both with God, with others. Demonic reappraisals, the devil made me do it, or the devil did this to me. Reappraisal of God's powers. Well, God can't be all powerful if he made all these horrible things happen. You ever heard that one before? Okay, so what is the, sounds positive but really is negative? Or what I call happy faith. Okay? Happy faith versus a more determined faith. And just for those of you who want to know, this is my second iteration. If you want to know my first iteration of faith, it was fear God, accept responsibility, inherit your destiny, tend the garden, and hold on to your shields. But I, for whatever reason, was like, maybe I need to go to one words instead of phrases. So forgiveness, because that's so key, right? And acceptance and integration integrating and practicing what you preach, right? Thankfulness and honor. Versus a happy faith, right? A happy faith is all about their will and their doctrine. They don't need to forgive anybody because they'll tell you they have, even though they haven't, right? They'll tell you that they're perfect in their will and their doctrine, right? God is good. Oh, I'm good 110% of the time, right? They don't need to accept the reality that sometimes bad things happen to good people, because bad things don't happen to good people, according to this, right? A plus B equals C. If I'm a good person and I go to church and I pray and do what God wants me, bad things will never happen to me. That's wrong, isn't it, John? Do you see how that would mess with your mental health? Right? Versus the honor of saying, well, I'm going to try my best and I'm going to live with the results, but the results sometimes are not good and sometimes they're better than I could have imagined. But I can't always make something happen, can we? Does that make sense? That there's we want to perceive that we have some control, but not all control, right? We don't want to view God as Santa Claus and, oh, I'm blessed. How are you? Oh, I'm blessed, right? Oh, I'm making millions of dollars, well, right? Because God is blessing me. Is that the way that works? Does anybody know what inshallah means? So it's a Muslim Arabic term, inshallah, and it means God willing or Allah willing, but it's their excuse for not doing anything, right? Here's your rifle. Here's the manual how to clean your rifle. Now you got to clean your rifle before we go out and do anything, or else your rifle's going to jam. Oh, I'll clean my rifle, inshallah. Which means they ain't going to clean their rifle. Right? Sort of like us, what do? We say, oh, you need something? Well, my thoughts and prayers are with you. Don't we say that? And isn't that sometimes our excuse for not doing anything? Well, that's their whole belief. Right? And then they cover stuff up, right? Because they don't want to be shamed. Whereas a determined faith, right, works on their negative stuff. See the difference? We take responsibility and say, you know what? That little piece of my life, I'm practicing what I'm preaching. I need to work on that. As opposed to, yeah, I'm good. Don't look over there, right? And then particularly, do you wake up every morning and be thankful and grateful? Or do you feel entitled? And do you remember Jacob and Esau? Esau felt entitled to the firstborn status, but didn't do anything, didn't really want it, kind of gave it away for a bowl of soup. So, let me give you an example of happy faith. So this is from Stephen Mansfield, The Faith of the American Soldier, written in 2005. And here's the story from his book. What clearly does not work, what does not survive the crucible of war, is a simplistic, one answer fits all kind of spirituality. In fact, this is normally the first thing soldiers and their chaplains mention. The soldier who has an easy religious answer for everything is the one I watch carefully, one commander said. If a soldier doesn't have enough flex in his thinking, if his religion is a rigid set of unchangeable explanations for everything that happens in this world, then war is going to mess with his mind in a serious way. Sometimes this easy believism leads to tragic results. One soldier who newly joined a transportation company, came fresh to the field with what some who served with him called a happy faith. Bad things didn't happen to good people, this soldier believed. His church background taught him that the holy are protected from all harm and that his fellow soldiers suffered because they did not pray properly or live the God kind of life. Do you see how this is maybe not the right kind of religion we want? Some early successes only made this soldier bolder, both in the fight and in faith. Then, a female soldier this young man had become fond of was killed at his side. The experience shook the inner workings of his soul, and when he had no frame of reference for the experience, he began to unravel. Months went by, and his downward spiral grew more traumatic. Chaplains and counselors could not lift him out of the darkness that descended on him. When others in his company were killed, he sank deeper. The look of utter dislocation on his face became painful for his fellow soldiers to see. 9 months after arriving in country, this soldier, who had once been so bright and sure, opened a vein and bled himself to death. Do you see how religion can be a bad thing? But it can be the key to dealing with things, and that's why this is so important, right? Because what if we do? If we ignore religion, is that the right answer? It's not, is it? Right? Because if we ignore it, we might get more happy faith. We might get more negative religious coping, right? God punishing me. And we might get less of post-traumatic growth. So, what does it look like? This idea of spiritual development, and I'm suggesting it's the key to everything else. Because you got to get here, right? You got to get to where I accept before you can say I can or I dream. Does that make sense? Right? You got to accept reality. That's the beginning. And this idea that out of spiritual doubt can emerge a deeper faith, right? And really challenging your fundamental spiritual, existential questions about death and the purpose of life, right? Is how you get to accept the reality of this world. Is this making sense? You got any questions about that? Right? The world is not safe, but you can feel safe how? By seeking support from God and others. You can trust other people. Not everybody, right? But you can trust some, right? And that's even why we're here. Because this is a place, hopefully, of trust and loving kindness. We are not alone, right? And once we have this deeper faith leads us to what? This better understanding of a purpose of life. By you having a good day and maybe smiling, do you make a difference in other people's lives? Do you having a bad day and admitting it and not covering up, do you make a difference in somebody's life?
No.
Right? No?
No.
You don't want somebody to admit that?
No, around here. if you sit
We're
down-
all fake and functional, right?
No, if you sit down at dinner with somebody and one of them starts talking about all
Their problems.
then the next person chimes in, and then pretty soon you're depressed before you eat your dinner.
Okay. But to some point, you want somebody, instead of always saying they're fine, at some point to say, no, I'm not fine.
Yeah, there's a
Right?
balance.
And then that helps develop trust, right?
There's a balance.
But there's a place and a time for it. It's not you want to enjoy dinner. That's not the time always,
Yeah, but it's just
right?
like God and people. It's, you've got to have that collaboration, that
Ah.
balance. Because there was a woman here who died, wonderful woman, but all she did was talk about her problems.
Okay.
Wonderful woman, but she just
Always talk about our problems.
never talked about anything positive in her life.
Oh. So then what did that make you feel about her? Or think about her?
I was saddened. I was saddened about her.
Okay.
And I listened to her, but I got to a point where I didn't want to listen to her.
Right. So is it helpful then to have people that, one, can tell us when we're having a bad day so that we trust them, but two, really try earnestly on their own, right, to be thankful and accepting, right, so then that they uplift you as opposed to bringing you down, right? And isn't that the part of the point of loving kindness, is that hopefully we can all individually, sort of like a football team, to have a good play, right? And even if, let's say we get the running back to run the ball from here to here, but don't we need another guy blocking and another guy blocking and another guy blocking to make it, instead of just a 2-yard gain, to a 4-yard gain, maybe a 10-yard gain? We need everybody doing their job. Isn't that what we want here at Belly Chase? We want, if all of us work on ourselves and work on loving each other, right? And loving ourselves, we make this a better place, don't we?
Yes.
So, and that's how we can then accept the world as it is. Yes, it doesn't mean that we're all going to be fake and functional. I would argue that we, maybe not dinner. That's maybe not the place. You should enjoy dinner, right? But there's a time and place to say, hey, I'm not doing good. Isn't there? So that we build trust with each other. And that then is loving kindness, right? Is really loving the person when they're not doing good. Did I just lose? Like the battery went out or something?
Reverend, or Chaplain
I
Bill,
think
we
the
have to
battery
go
went
get our,
out.
we have to go get our shots. It's not, we're not.
Oh, I
leaving
know.
Because of you.
It's the song.
This is actually the last slide, Jonathan. Do you like this though?
Okay, I like it a lot.
That we have to work on our spirituality to the point where we can accept the world as it is. Then we can have some personal strength to say, I can. Then we can dream about new possibilities. And hopefully have an attitude of gratitude and be thankful each and every day. And that really allows us to love each other. Good stuff?
Good stuff, thank you.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you.
Yep. All right. Well, my wife went out. Do you have questions?
Must be a song.
Yeah? Do you like the research? Do you like what I put together? Did it make sense?
Are you working on a doctorate?
I was. That's where some of this maybe came from. Yes, I was.
Congratulations on your accomplishment, though, with cats.
Oh, you like that?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good job.
Yeah. That was a lot of work.
Yeah. That's why it's not.
And I'm-
it's doctorate.
I'm waiting for the pay raise. I haven't seen it yet. I'm supposed to see it. Yeah, yeah. And the next one. Yeah. Yeah, so in addition to Master of Divinity,
Yeah.
I am somewhat close to a Doctor of Psychology.
So
Because
you're
I
going
thought,
forward with that?
no,
Oh, you're not?
No.
You've had enough?
yes.
I understand.
Well, because I think I know enough to, I mean, did you like this?
Yes, it reminds me of my son-in-law,
I don't,
who does have the doctor of psychology.
right?
Yeah.
I don't know that I need more to say that I think God has given me enough to hopefully make an impact on other people. So, and hopefully this type of stuff could really impact people. Right? To say, here's our ideas, right? And sometimes we get some phony ideas in us, right? Does time heal all wounds?
In eternity.
Right? But don't we know if you don't clean out a wound, the wound gets bad, don't it? And it can possibly get fester and get to the point where you gotta cut it off. That's not good, is it? What do you gotta do? You gotta clean out the wound, right? Does that sound like therapy? Right? You gotta clean it out. And then you gotta put what? Some sort of balm and a dressing, but the dressing can't cover it completely. It needs to allow what to help it to heal? Do you know? Air. Right? And our word for the Holy Spirit is wind, breath, air, or spirit. Right? So you need, that's where the time, as in just allow the Holy Spirit to work on your life, allow you to go through a process of asking questions in your life of what do you really truly believe, right? And then allowing those basic beliefs to be hopefully changed for the better to where you go, oh, God still loves me, even though this world's messed up, right? And then if God still loves me, then you can hopefully say, I love myself. And if you can get there, then you can do what? Then you can love other people. See how that works? Right? But it's hard when your body's falling apart, your mind's falling apart, you lose mobility, you lose whatever, right? And it's just a constant, and like I said, it's not just one event, is it? It's almost ongoing trauma, right? And compound and complex, and each one builds upon the other, but that's where you gotta get these core beliefs in you. Right? So don't think God's punishing you. Right? Do wrestle with God to the point where, okay, God, why am I still here? Right? What is going on? Right? And then you can say, well, I don't fully know, but I think God's still got some purpose for me. Right? All of you all just made a difference in my day because I was hoping to not just have 3 people here today. I was hoping to have a decent audience because I felt this was good stuff. I felt this was worthy of a good audience, right? So you made an impact on me today. Hopefully, if I've made an impact on you in the 2 years that I've been here, right? Right? Do you see how we then, part of our purpose is to make an impact on each other, to love each other. So then, that's all it has to be. Sometimes we get too involved with, well, the purpose in our life has to be to, to be famous, make $1 billion, and to, cure cancer. Right?
Or in the old thing, there were some who were so heavenly bound that they're earthly good.
Right, no, so heavenly bound that we're no earthly good. We've heard that, right? Because sometimes one of the best things we can do is what? What did I do the other day? I helped a woman get her watermelon from her cart into her trunk. Hopefully that helped her that day, right? Did that tax me? It took like 5 seconds. It really, right? But hopefully I made a difference just by doing something simple, because she saw me, we were buying pumpkins. We had to get the big ones, right, for the front porch. So she was like, hey, while you're at it, could you? And I'm like, sure. Sometimes it's nothing more than that, right?
Sometimes it's just a smile.
Sometimes it's just a smile. Like the idea that it doesn't have to be super spiritual. It doesn't have to be, super financially blessed. It can just simply be being you, right? And being there, saying, how you doing today, right? that can be part of our purpose, right?
Yes. But how do we know that's our purpose?
Well, that's for you to struggle with God for it.
Yeah,
That's your struggle,
yeah, you keep struggling.
right?
I wonder why.
But that's what I'm saying. When you, and here's the other thing: it's not necessarily about having an answer, is it? Did I say you got to have a bunch of answers, or do you just got to get to where you accept? See this? Does that mean you got answers? Because what was wrong was, let's go back. Go back up. What was wrong was the happy faith where they had all the answers. Right?
Yes.
What is right is saying, I don't know. I don't know all the answers, but I do know what? That God loves me. And because of that, and I'm thankful. Because of that, I can live my life with purpose and at least think that I'm making a difference. Right?
Yeah.
How do we know? Will we ever know?
I guess not until thereafter.
I mean, have you ever had somebody come up to you and say, you know, you really changed my life. You made a difference in me like 20 years ago, 10 years ago. You ever had that? Janice, you were a teacher. I'm assuming somebody came up to you at some point in your life and said, right?
Don't
Sherry, you were,
brag about that.
yeah, Sherry, you were a teacher as well?
Yeah, and then the kids the grown-ups that came back and said, what we remember is this. You know, you read to us, you did this, you read the whole Chronicles of
Right.
Narnia to us, you know, that sort
Oh,
of thing.
awesome. Yeah.
But I one thing, went around the corner of McDonald's one time, and the lady just had this loveliest smile. And I told her she had a lovely smile, and she brightened up like
Yeah?
something little. She did.
Okay.
It's a little thing.
Makes a difference, doesn't it? When we notice. I try to notice, but I'm a dude, so I'm not really great at this. But I've noticed that if I pay attention and say, oh, I noticed you got your hair done today.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it looks good, right? It makes a difference, right? I hope it does. And I'm trying. I don't always notice. But I try to. Right? How else can we, what else are you getting out of this? What does acceptance mean to you? Do you like that idea? What does it mean, Nina?
We're just learning to accept things gifts that are given to you
You're not listening now.
that you're not currently aware of. And
Oh,
I think that the fact that you accept that something has happened
okay.
strengthens you.
Yeah. Did y'all hear that? She said that sometimes it's accepting that you're being given gifts that you aren't even aware of. And that these things that strengthen us, we don't always recognize it right today, do we?
No.
And isn't that part of what this is? Right? Because Scripture teaches us to rejoice in our suffering. Why? Because it makes us better. Right? It makes us better. Suffering brings us to what? Perseverance. Perseverance brings us to character. Right? That's the real moment of change. Does that make sense? That when you rejoice in your suffering, it allows you to, or what you should do is then persevere through it. Go through the process. Going through the process actually changes your character. So are you recognizing this from Romans 5?
Yeah, I was gonna say,
It's Romans 5 if you're not. Suffering leads to perseverance, perseverance leads to character, character leads to hope. And not a false hope like, oh, God's gonna fix it all. But a real hope to go, you know, if I just work through this process, every time something bad happens, I'm gonna be okay. I'm gonna be okay. And you know what? I can help other people. Oh, then I can feel like I have some purpose in life. Right? Why? Because I know that this is the process that helped me. Now hopefully I can help somebody else. And sometimes it's just saying, yep, we're all sinners and we're all saints. Yep, the world's not safe. But you can feel more safe if you really seek that safety and support from God and from others. Right? I know you don't want to trust anybody else right now because you've been burned. But there's people that are worth trusting. There are people that will be nice to you and help you. Right? Take care of you when you need them to take care of you. And usually that's how it works. Do people take care of you when you don't need them to take care of you?
Sometimes.
Sometimes. But when you really need it, do people show up?
So far.
So far. Did you see how our answers weren't black and white? Again, it's not about the answers, is it?
No.
It's about the process. And then the process should lead us to what? An attitude.
Because the questions are more important than the answers.
Oh, did you hear that? The questions are more important than the
But
answers.
then they lead you through this.
Because they lead you to greater appreciation of life. Lead you to, oh, you know what? I've been burned, but it's still worth it for me to try to get new friends. Right? Okay. The questions should lead us to, there are some things I can control and there's some things I can't control. What can I control? Well, I can control myself and my attitude. Right? Well, let me be thankful for what I have. Because despite the world seemingly going to hell in a handbasket, are we still in the most prosperous, most free, most blessed place and time in the universe ever?
Yes.
And if you don't think so, go to some other country. And you'll see how blessed we are, even though it feels like we're going downhill. Right? And that should get us to where we dream. Can we still have dreams even at the end of life? Right? We dream what? For a better life for our kids and our grandkids, right? Can we have some influence on that? Can we dream for better lives for the staff around here that we really like? Can we make an impact on that? We can, can't we? So, and I would ask, not a shameless plug, but the idea of, do you all like Richie? Do you dream for a better life for Richie and his kids? Throw a few dollars in the collection plate, because most, help Richie out. Do you like communion? Throw a few dollars in the collection plate, because it helps buy the wine and the bread, Do you like the other staff? Did we start the
Just
fundraising
getting
for the?
Just getting started.
Yeah, and Mel's leading that up, isn't he?
Yeah.
And that is so wonderful. In fact, Jonathan had led that up before Mel, and he talked about how, because I remember the first year I was here, because I've been here now just over 2 years, then the idea that it's grown every year, at least that Jonathan's been here, because he was telling me, and the idea of, man, if we could, especially help out some people that probably really could use it. Right? And then those of us who spend more than we'd like to on Christmas presents. I bought my wife these beautiful sandals with a seashell on them, right? And they actually have a clasp in the back, so they're not fully open, they're not fully like a flip-flop, they're like a full sandal with a clasp in the back. And, but they're really expensive because they're from my Italian exchange student brother that I've known for decades, you know, and he hand makes them in Italy and then ships them to me. So they're not cheap, right? And of course the daughter loved them.
So,
So now I'm like, okay,
2 pairs.
it's October. It's about time I go get hers made and get them shipped for Christmas,
Yeah.
right? But they ain't cheap. So we all have our problems, right? Some people are trying to put food on the table. Others are trying to buy handmade Italian sandals. I'm just being a little sarcastic just to show that we could all use it, right?
And sometimes the postage costs more than the.
I was gonna, yeah.
Like,
Yeah, shipping them from Italy is a big part of the price. Yep. But if you really like handmade Italian shoes,
here's the place to go.
he really is quality.
hmm.
So, huh?
When you said about shoes and stuff, I'm limited to what type of shoe I can wear because of my prosthetic
Right.
and height appeal and everything else. But the one thing I noticed over the years, and it's been over 18 years that my leg's been gone. And when I told them to cut it off, they all looked at me. But I had talked it over with the Lord for several months,
Okay.
and we decided that it was killing me, literally killing me. And I told him I wanted it off. And after some tests and all, they said, yeah, you made the right decision. So that
Mm.
was
And that was 18 years ago?
over 18 years ago, yeah.
And that was the right decision?
Yes, it was. I never regretted it. Because I was tired of being so sick when I go septic again. And the third time was like, I just can't do this. I gotta stop it. And,
Mm.
that's when I said, take it. Lord says it does you harm or whatever. And I said, it's doing me harm, get rid of it.
Mm.
And I never regretted it.
Did y'all hear her story? Isn't that powerful? Isn't that really a great illustration of what we're talking about? Something hard, a very hard decision, right? Prayer.
And the reason I'm in the wheelchair is because my back cracked.
Yeah, so
The leg had nothing to
the
do
leg
with
had
it.
nothing to do with it.
But, yeah,
Yep.
now I need to learn to put it to other things in my life.
Yeah. Yeah, and don't all of us at the end of life probably have multiple
Yeah,
decisions like that we need to make. Right? Tough decisions, right? That need prayer, that need us to come to something that maybe we aren't ready to accept and to admit, right? But are maybe the best decision for us. And that's hard, isn't it? Yeah, but that's part of the process, right? And that can be growth in the midst of decline, right? Yeah. Thank you all.
Thank you.
thank you.